Welcome to today's episode on the corner of homelessness and safety nets. Before we get any further, let's be reminded of our disclaimer. Homelessness is a complex issue. We don't claim to explore every part of this intersection, but hope that each conversation brings new clarity to the reality as a whole. Please keep an open, curious mindset as we explore complexity and seek to learn just as we are. With that said, I'm Gwyn Griffith.
And I'm Joe Ader.
And today we are joined by Commissioner Clarence H. Carter. He was appointed to serve as Commissioner of Tennessee Department of Human Services in 2021. He's been recognized for his innovation in public administration, his dedication to public service, and his focus on improving the safety net for socially and economically vulnerable citizens. Mr. Carter is also a published author who most recently published the book Our Net Has Holes in It. With over 30 years of experience, he has served under 4 governors, 2 presidents, and a mayor. We are grateful for him to set aside some time of his busy schedule to talk with us today. Welcome, Commissioner Carter.
Good afternoon, Gwyn and Joe. Pleasure to be here with you and your audience.
Thank you.
So glad to have you.
Sure.
America spends $1.49 trillion on social services each year, but it seems like poverty is increasing always. It seems like need is still increasing, homelessness. Why is that the case?
So as the headline is, it is not that we don't spend enough. It is not that we don't care enough. It's not that we don't have enough programs. It is that our design and operation is fundamentally flawed. And that really is the essence of the book that I wrote on this. Our Net Has Holes in It, and I begin the book by talking about the generosity and benevolence of the American society. Okay, and I showcase our foreign aid. Also our charitable giving at home, and then also what we spend in the pursuits of serving the vulnerable in America. And so, Joe, you properly quoted the figure 1.4 trillion, but the truth is that is only the federal government outlay. Okay, so as an administrator of the program at the state level, okay, the states are required to put in dollars to actually administer the programs. Okay, so in other words, let's just take one program. So the SNAP program. Okay, now up until now, the federal government has paid completely the benefit, but Tennessee has to put up half of the cost to administer the program. And I only say this to let your audience know that the 1.4 trillion, it's not fully representative of what we spend in American society on this. And then underneath what the states have to put in to administer the programs, we then also, in that 1.4 trillion, are not counting one dime of what the private sector, puts in, what the nonprofit sector puts in. So I have not yet been able to do a full environmental scan, but I think that $1.4 trillion number is closer to over $2 trillion annually.
Absolutely. I just did a quick Google search of it, but just on the private side last year, $592 billion.
There you go. That's it.
So that kicks us right over that $2 billion, not including state money.
Not including state money. And so, Gwyn and Joe, so I dial that back to my basic premise, and a lot of my colleagues get troubled when I say this, but this system doesn't need more money. Okay, it needs more common sense.
Okay.
Can you explore that a little bit further?
Sure. Again, the dollars that are needed to address the issues of vulnerability in our society, we already make those dollars available. The problem is, because of the design of the system, where you have scores of single purpose programs, that each of those programs have to have their own operating structure. Okay, you end up losing large portions of your investment in all of the different substructures you have to build to operate these individual programs. So therefore, it is truly the design of the system which gets us to a place where it's absorbing a lot of the dollars that actually don't ever get to service, again, because of the design. And so that's why I go back to basic premise. We don't need more. We need more common sense.
Do you think that there's the ability to stitch those programs together in order to make it more successful? Or is this like a whole, we need to redesign the entire system?
Well, it does need redesign, but I would argue that, and again, I lay this out in the book, that there is a way to achieve that, while sort of, if you would, rebuilding the plane as we're flying it. Okay, we don't have we don't have any opportunity to close down shop and say, under construction, we'll be back later. Okay, we have we have vulnerable neighbors every day, all day, and so the system has got to keep operating. But I do believe, and again, I lay this out, this vision, that there is a way to move towards this very transformed system, and that begins with, and this gets to a core problem of the system. We don't begin with a shared objective. Okay, and so because we don't have a shared objective, then you end up following the objectives of all of the individual component parts. So in other words, the rules of all the programs are what dictate, as opposed to an overarching vision.
Yeah, no, and we've seen that in our work here. We work with homeless families, and are the largest provider of services to homeless families in the country here. But the system is designed around compliance rather than outcomes.
That is exactly correct.
And so, like, even some of our grantors, when we talk about outcomes, are really more interested on, but did you fill out the form correctly?
And guys, the truth is, that is the way that the system has been designed, and we have trained it. Okay, we have built a system of compliance. Let me take a program that everybody understands, the SNAP or food stamp program. Okay, the design of that was intended to serve consumers that are economically vulnerable and need help putting food on the table. Okay. I administer that program. I get held accountable for three things. The first is, did I deliver it to the consumer that was entitled to receive it? The second is, did I give it to them in the right amount? The third is, did I give it to them in the appropriate time frame? If I do those three things well, I have run a great food stamp program, whether or not people are still starving. And that program it doesn't ask me, what did I do to help somebody maybe not need food stamps in a month, 6 months or a year? And so The focus is on the rules of the program, not human well-being. And that is a fundamental flaw of our current system of public supports. Okay, we focus on. I can tell you how many units of service that I've delivered. I can't tell you the impact. Nobody asked me that. Okay, and shouldn't our ultimate objective be to help that consumer ultimately not need those most basic supports of life?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're speaking my language, Clarence, because, we talk about that all the time here of, I'd rather you give us money for outcomes,
That's right.
but, I got to keep bed counts.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The number of beds in my shelter has nothing to do with how many people I get housed.
That's right.
And that's so we see that definitely on the homeless side, very, very apparent. In the grant, I have to apply for bed counts. I don't get to apply for outcomes, which doesn't make any sense.
That is why we are currently engaged in a couple of pilots in Tennessee that we have termed the Human Flourishing Initiative, and the objective is to have at the community level an ecosystem of care in which a consumer, no matter what their vulnerability, whether that be housing, incarceration, poverty, mental health, whatever, that they can enter into this community-based ecosystem of care. And you then do an environmental scan of that consumer, okay? And the whole idea is, let's understand what's all attributes to this consumer being in the place where they have this vulnerability. Then what you do is you take the results of that environmental scan, and a navigator works with the consumer to then co-create a plan that has benchmarks and outcomes. And then that navigator connects them to the component parts of that ecosystem of care and measures their movement towards growing beyond the vulnerability. And so the idea is we want to have a Tennessee where you can meet someone in crisis and help them to address the immediate crisis, but then put them on a path to stabilization, thriving, and ultimately flourishing. To be able to literally create a Tennessee where everyone has the opportunity to ultimately flourish.
Great.
We tend to focus on prevention and stabilization, and we want those things to be addressed so we can move upstream, right? Mm-hmm. Not just be reactive, but be proactive.
Right.
But we were talking about how a lot of the systems are set up for this reaction-based care.
That's correct.
What are our next steps? Like, how do we go about changing that to get more people on the idea of we need to shift how we're looking?
So, when I think the first part of this is that we have to completely reframe the narrative, okay? And what I mean by that is, because of the design of our system and the political environment that we exist in, you end up, first of all, pitting interventions against each other. So in other words, child welfare's got to fight for child welfare money for children. Okay, the system of incarceration, we got to fight for the dollars, and they're doing it literally because of a belief in the interventions that they're responsible for. There's not bad will in that. But then you throw on top of that the political dynamics of the day, where we have gone into opposite corners and our fists are balled up, and if you got on the other color, you're an asshole. Okay? We end up, again, fighting over the wrong things. I believe that this is a nation of goodwill. That it's our collective intention. It's built into our DNA to help. Our challenge has been, how do we go about doing that? How we go about creating a helping system that is dedicated to not just the delivery of stuff, but dedicated to helping that consumer solve the problem. Okay? At the end of the day, success is not that I got you a benefit, good, or service. Success is the day that you can turn around and say thanks, but no thanks. Because I've had the supports that I needed to have, and now I can take the baton of my life and run the rest of the race. Okay, that has to be our shared objective. And so if we can set that out as first a true north, then you could look at all of the supports and make those supports tools in a toolkit to achieve the ultimate objective.
In your book, you talk about a hammock and a trampoline. Will you explain that?
So, and I may end up mixing metaphors a little bit.
That's fine.
We do all the time.
In the mixing the metaphors, I'm going to go back to the beginning, the introduction in my book. And it's the book is titled "Our Net Has Holes in It." And the introduction takes the reader back to when I was 8 years old. And my mother took my brothers and I to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. And I was fascinated by all the things going on in the three different rings. You know, you got the animals that are doing tricks, and you got the jugglers and the clowns, and it was all just, and the lights and the music, was all fascinating. Later in the performance, the lights direct your eyes to the top of the arena. And you can see people at the top of the arena. They're almost microscopic in size. They're so high up. But they are on walking across this really thin wire and swinging on this trapeze and that sort. And while I was fascinated, I was also frightened. And I said to my mom, Mom, what would happen if somebody fell? And she redirected my sight line to underneath the performance. And she said, you see, son, that thing that's hanging there, that's called a safety net. And if one of the performers falls, that net will catch them and keep them from hurting themselves. And I say literally, as if on cue, one of the performers fell, bounced into the net several times, steadied themselves, got back over to the ladder, and climbed back into the performance. And I said, little did I realize at 8 years of age that I had seen a glimpse into my future. And I said, but what happened if that net had holes in it and it didn't catch the performer and break their fall? They would fall to their harm. And that's my argument, that our current safety net has holes in it. So it doesn't catch the life performers and keep them from harm and bounce them back into the performance. And so now this is where we go sort of the trampoline and the hammock. So instead of that being designed in a way that allows for that bounce, for that, first of all, the individual to land and not be harmed, but then to bounce back into action, it operates more as a hammock, which actually traps people from the ability to bounce back into the performance of life.
Okay. And sometimes you go to lay in that hammock and it flips over on you, right?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Again, Gwen and Joe, the whole headline here for me is, first of all, we absolutely, as an American society, must have a system of public supports or safety net. Because in every society known to humankind, there have been consumers who have been vulnerable. And so there must be systems to address that vulnerability. My argument is that system ought to be dedicated to helping that consumer grow beyond the vulnerability that has them have to ask for the most basic supports of life. That's how we want to transform the American safety net.
We went really quickly into this. I think one thing that our listeners might not be aware of, at least some of them, is what does the safety net provide? I think for people who haven't had to experience it, it might be a foreign concept to them.
I would explain it as an aggregation of single-purpose programs. Each program was designed to address some aspect of human vulnerability. And so these programs are administered by state and local government and the private nonprofit sector, along with many other private supports, ultimately to address the needs of vulnerability of individuals in our society. That's the safety net.
What made you write the book now? We talk about how this has been going on for a while, so why now?
So Gwen, I have been an administrator in this system of public supports for my entire time in public service, which is now 35 years. Okay. Have had the blessing and good fortune of serving in the administration of 2 presidents, 4 governors, and a mayor in this work. And so through that journey, I have come to intimately understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of that $1.4 trillion system. Okay. And the headline is that we are not meeting our own intention in the dollars that we spend in this system. And I'm going to go in a slightly different direction here for a minute. Okay. As I was really coming of age during the civil rights movement, and so then really got to understand it better once I got older. To me, what I feel like the brilliance of Dr. King's leadership was that he believed in this nation and knew that it was not living out its own intention. And what he did was he said, if I can hold a mirror up to the nation and it sees that it's not being what it said it was purported to be. And I feel like that mirror is ultimately what helped to guide the actions of getting us, from the very difficult spaces that we were in, using the civil rights movement to get beyond it. Similarly here, I believe that, again, it is our intention to help. Okay? As I said, we spend a whole bunch of our resources to help. Okay? And the other thing is, you will notice in this country, whenever there is any kind of tragedy or calamity, everybody runs to help. and brings whatever it is they have. You know, somebody might have a truck or a shovel or make sandwiches or provide $1 or what have you. But it's that what's built in our DNA is to help. And so my argument is we want to help, and we've made the resources available to help. We just have a very poor execution of our intention to help. And so the reason for the book is I'm going to hold that mirror up to our country and say, look, yes, it's our intention to serve those that are vulnerable amongst us, but we're not doing it well. And it's not with a bad intention, but a good friend of mine said one time, if you're shot accidentally, you're still shot. So it doesn't make any difference. Okay, that this is what we intend to do. We have to, we really have to have our execution meet our intention.
I grew up with Mr. Rogers always on TV, and he told a story often about his mom telling him in times of tragedy and times of pain, look for the helpers.
Look for the help.
And especially in this work that we're in, like you said, we see people reaching out to help all the time.
That's right.
It's just the redirection or the capturing of that in a way that pushes us forwards is where we're trying to go now.
One thing that we see a lot of is like really quick good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hurricane comes in, it's a crisis.
That's right.
Tornado happens, it's a crisis. So you have a crisis response, but then we build a system of crisis response around a chronic problem as well.
That's right. That's exactly correct.
How do you get a community past that?
So again, it begins with shifting the narrative. Okay, and one of the things that I also argue for in the book is, Joe, just like you said, we provide many short-term interventions as if that 6-week program is going to somehow address literally years of structural challenge. Okay? And so in changing the narrative, what I hope to be able to ask of the system is, judge me on movement, not on time. That's what's important. Okay? Not putting not putting some kind of artificial time marker on something. You know, I started this work. As I said, I've been in it 35 years. So the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program is 30 years old this year. So I was in this business during the design phase, and one of the features was a 5-year time limit. Okay, and part of my argument then and now is not so much the 5 years or 60 months, is what do we do in that time? Okay, because it should be, again, our ultimate objective is to help that consumer move beyond. And so, yes, there is value to having a time limit, but at the end of the day, it's just another random number. And if you can hold me accountable to outcomes, and then I can show you as I'm moving along a continuum of those outcomes, you're getting the return on the investment that our society is seeking.
What can a listener to this, the average listener, what can they do to impact this? They're hearing, they say, yes, I'm agreeing with you. What could I do that influences this?
So this gets a little trickier, Okay, and I need to sort of go out and come back in on this one. Another part of the problem of the existing system is that as the size and scope of government has grown over the past 70 years, it has, in many instances, crowded out other sectors from being a part of the problem solving. Okay, and so we have come to a belief that somehow the government will fix this problem. Okay? Well, what I say in my book is this problem is bigger than any one program, any one agency, any one funding stream, but it's not bigger than all of us. And so there has to be a collective response to this, just like there's that collective response when there's any other kind of tragedy, okay? When everybody just runs to help. This needs to be that same sort of run to help. And so the first thing that anyone can do is find a way, a place that they can help. Are you a part of an organization of faith that has some kind of ministry that helps? Okay, are you a member of the Rotary Club? Okay, or a fraternity or a sorority? Okay, if you're a philanthropist or part of a philanthropy, think about how can we make the dollars that we're making available speak to the redesign of this system. So it really comes down to, first, let me individually find a place where I can be a helper. And it needs to be a place that speaks to my spirit. Because if it doesn't speak to my spirit, then I'm not gonna stick with it. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to find that place to help. Okay, then the next part of this is really, and again, this goes back to the reason for the book. Okay, to better understand the dysfunction that we pour not only our dollars, but our intention into. Okay? Because what I hope to do through the book is to literally rally the nation to say, oh, we're not doing what we intended to do. We want to help people. And yet the systems that we currently have to do that suck. Okay. And so begin to get clear on this so that we can collectively demand change. The public system is so massive, okay, and there is tinkering inside the system that's going on to, there are different initiatives and that sort. But the truth is, the impetus to fix this is not going to come from the inside. It has to come from the greater population that says, my intention to help is not being met, and I demand that it be different.
Do you think that with all the division we have currently, that it is possible?
When two answers to that. One is, and I've got to be very transparent here, I am the ultimate optimist. And so in that ultimate optimism, I actually believe that it can. And here's why I think that it can. Okay. In the things that I have shared with you and your audience today, I have had this consistent theme for all of the time that I've been in this system. And I have worked in both left and right administrations in this set of ideas. And the thing is, in all of my instances, I led with a set of ideas, not waving a particular political or ideological flag. It's the flag of helping folks. And so when we're able to start the conversation in a place where we all agree we want to help, okay? Then I do believe that we can begin to move in that direction. So I'm optimistic. Now, do I think that I will see the other side of this in my lifetime? No, I don't. Okay. But I do believe that if we can be a catalyst and begin this, the momentum of this over time will take over. And yes, we ultimately can get it done.
It just reminded me of that quote from Eleanor Roosevelt where she said, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people."
That's it. There you go. That's it.
This season, we're focused on hope and what brings people hope and what we can pull hope out of. And so my question to you is, what do you find hopeful in this conversation, in the work you are doing?
Over the course of my time in this work, when I get a little frustrated or down, all I have to do is find someone that the system has truly helped and that they've overcome whatever the burden is. The light that goes on in somebody's eyes when it's like, oh, I got it. Okay, I can do this. That is so empowering, so uplifting for me. Okay, that yes, I'm a person of pretty deep faith, and I believe that God has placed in every one of us the ability and the stuff that we need to make our way in this world. I think, unfortunately, for some of our neighbors, those things get blocked. And when we come alongside somebody and help them get those things unblocked, and they understand that they can control their lives, that they can be the captain of their ship. Oh my goodness, that is just uplifting to my spirit. And so I'm hopeful that we can set out a vision that would be our intention for everybody, that they can find their freedom to be able to make their life what they choose it to be.
Well, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to have you with us today.
My pleasure, folks.
Thanks, Clarence.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. If you have questions or ideas for topics, please reach out to us at podcast@familingpromiseofspokane.org. We want you to be a part of this conversation, and we want to hear from you. Thank you to Lucy Pearson and Eleanor Pigg for their assistance with this episode. And lastly, a big thank you to you. Thank you for listening, for being willing to learn, and for always staying curious. Until next time, this has been On the Corner of Homelessness and...